Joining me now is the former Republican Speaker of the House, John Boehner, author of the new book on the House, A Washington Memoir. Speaker Boehner, I have to say I've read a lot of memoirs in my life. This one is definitely the funniest and probably the most candid. So thank you for that. And we have a lot to talk about in the book. But I first want to start with the moment that we're in this country. We've had yet another mass shooting Thursday night, a couple overnight. 8 people in Indianapolis, that's the one on Thursday, were killed. 47 mass shootings in the United States in just over the last month. And I know you know this, polls show the vast majorities of Americans support at least some new gun restrictions. When you were Speaker, there were 20 first graders who were killed in Newtown, Connecticut. Looking back now, do you regret not passing new gun laws then? And do you want to see Republicans come to the table now, at least, to pass something?
Well, back when Newtown happened, we couldn't find common ground with the other side. And, I heard the earlier segment, and hopefully there's some common ground to be found. I know that Senator Pat Toomey's been working on this across the aisle, trying to come to some agreement. And hopefully they'll find some common ground, because this is, frankly, it's heartbreaking. I think it's embarrassing our country to the rest of the world, and we've got to find a way to deal with this problem.
So this would be a top priority for you, if you were still Speaker of the House.
Well, but I'm not. So those in power now are going to have to figure out what can be done. It's not about what everybody wants. It's a matter of what can be accomplished in a bipartisan way.
You really don't hold back in this book about where you see your party, the Republican Party, today. You called some of your colleagues political terrorists, knuckleheads, the Chaos Caucus. You were the top Republican in the country when this group, or at least parts of it, emerged. In your book, you say that you're not going to give a 15-point plan to save the world, and I understand that. But as I was reading it, I was thinking, he's like a doctor who's identifying a disease, but not giving a prescription on how to fix it. So as a lifelong Republican, don't you want to find a solution and be the person to try to do that?
Well, no, listen, I'm retired, and those that serve in public office today have a tough job governing. I think governing in America today is far harder than it was when I was there. But what I've suggested here over the last several months is Republicans have to go back to being Republicans. Focus in on the principles of what it means to be a Republican. A fiscal responsibility, a strong national defense. They can lay out a half a dozen principles that I think help bring our party together, which is really what's going to be necessary if we're going to have a chance to take back the majority in 2022 or 2024.
Well, that makes perfect sense, but you also outline in this book problems that have exploded about misinformation and flat-out lies, coming not just from right-wing media, but from some lawmakers who don't necessarily put those ideals that you just laid out at the top of the list in terms of what's important. And they continue to perpetuate the big lie. You've been clear that there was nothing even close to enough fraud that would have changed the 2020 election result. So are those people, your fellow Republicans, pushing this lie? Are they eroding democracy?
Well, you can describe it any way you want.
How would you
just
describe
think it's
it?
a little crazy. Listen, I tried to deal with the facts as they were, the facts as I knew them, and I tried to move forward based on facts. And there's people in both parties who are on the fringe. But listen, on any given day, I had 215 solid Republican votes, solid Republican members, good members. And remember, there are good members on both sides of the aisle. 90% of Congress are good, decent, honest people trying to do the right thing for their constituents and for the country. Mm-hmm. But in my case, on any given day, there were 2 or 3 dozen what I call knuckleheads who just wanted chaos. They wanted it all their way or no way.
But are the knuckleheads
American
now?
Democracy just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and are the knuckleheads now, much more dominant? I mean, it certainly seems that they are. And more importantly, let's focus on on how this is affecting policy. You know that because of this lie that they're dealing with, not dealing with the facts as you described it, there are 361 bills across the country right now, according to the Brennan Center, that are trying to roll back Americans' right to vote. What do you think about that?
Well, listen, I've served in the State House in Ohio before I went to Congress, and when we dealt with election issues, it was typically done on a bipartisan basis. Why? Because people need to have confidence in the voting systems in each of the states. And I think after the challenges that the last election proved out, every state's looking at their election systems, trying to figure out a way to make it fair, to make it more secure. And, you know, I don't know what all those different bills are. But listen, the only thing different today than when I was there is that, you know, those who want chaos have a bigger platform. Back 30 years ago, there was no platform. We always had some people on the fringe, right and left, but the press never paid any attention to them. These days, with talk radio, cable news, and all these social media platforms, the people on the fringes have a bigger platform to make their points. And frankly, create chaos, brings more attention to them. They're able to raise more money. And the idea of governing is something foreign to most of them.
You tell a story in your book about golfing with Donald Trump long before he was president. He was a private citizen, and he ended up berating one of your own aides because he mixed up the names of the golf partners that you were with. You wrote, "I'd never seen anybody treat a staffer like that, not in politics, not ever." You included that story for a reason, Mr. Speaker.
I did, because it showed me something about Donald Trump. It was the first time we'd ever played golf together. This young staffer made a mistake. But the way Donald Trump tore into this guy after the mistake became evident was just a bit shocking, and I was surprised.
So what does it say about him?
I don't know. It just says that he would treat staffers differently than I would. I never thought I was more important than any staffer that worked for me. We worked together. We're all part of one team. And yeah, I made mistakes. They made mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen. But I would never treat somebody like that, not in a million years.
You also tell a story about you trying to gossip with the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, about the Senate. And he told you, quote, "You'll never know as much about the Senate as I do," a jab that you described as a, quote, "kick in the balls." What does that say about Mitch McConnell behind the scenes?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a great lesson I learned from Mitch. And over the years, I got to know Mitch obviously a lot better than the day that episode happened. But Mitch McConnell, he's clearly different than I am, operates differently than I do. But there's a man who knows how to be a leader, holds his cards very close to his vest. And just because he's got a different personality than I do doesn't mean I think less of him. Actually, I think quite a bit of Mitch McConnell, because he's been a great leader and a great Senate Republican majority leader.
Before I let you go, I have to ask, you told my colleague Jake Tapper that hopefully you don't have that option to vote for President Trump again in 2024. I just want to clarify. It sounds like you're saying you don't want Donald Trump to run, correct?
Listen, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 3.5 years.
Well, what would you want to happen?
It's America. What I want to happen is somebody that stands up and represents all the principles of the Republican Party. Somebody that can bring the Republican Party together and win elections.
Is that Donald Trump?
Whoever it may be, we'll see.
Former House Speaker John Boehner, thank you so much. Again, funniest political memoir, most colorful I've ever read. Appreciate it.
Thank you.